Mr. Meister, I would like to start from the freshest event. I mean the visit of German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier to Georgia. There was a great interest towards this visit, especially because of his initiative towards Ukraine issue called Steinmeier's formula. And everybody wondered here whether he was bringing to Georgia some new plan or formula, but he declined it before the visit and during the visit also. But I would like to ask you a question, whether you see any potential of the EU, Germany or Mr. Steinmeier in bringing some impetus to dealing with the issue of Georgia's occupation.
I think Steinmeier, as the German president, who is more representative person, has not the power to have these kind of initiatives and impact like he had as the foreign minister, what he was before. My impression at the moment is that the EU and EU member states have an interest to push Ukraine, but also Georgia, to have a kind of an closer talk or agreement with Russia on the conflicts. But I don't see that they have ideas how to improve the situation. So I don't see really a leadership, neither a German leadership nor really a French leadership in the EU at the moment on the conflicts. There is this hope with Zelensky, and that maybe this dynamic we have in Ukraine could bring some benefits also to Georgia, to the Georgian conflict zones. But I think both are very specific, and I don't see that the Russians have an interest to make any compromise, nor do I see that Germany or the EU have any new ideas on how to bring a dynamic into these conflicts. So there is no new Steinmeier formula for, unfortunately not for Georgia and the Georgian conflicts.
Do you see any role of the West in not organizing, but just in having this meeting between Zalkalyani and Lavrov in New York?
I think yes. I think there is, as well as in Ukraine, as in Georgia, there is this pressure or push from the West to talk with Russia, because we have a growing interest to get rid of the Ukrainian sanctions and to improve relations with Russia at the moment. Yeah, it's also because of China. It's because of transatlantic relations and the difficulties with U.S. President Trump. And there is this dynamic at the moment, or this interest in the European Union to improve relations with Russia, and these conflicts are main obstacles. So I can imagine that there was also some interest or some influence, whatever, on the Georgian side to have a meeting.
Eastern Partnership is one of the dynamic and also strong instruments of the EU for the relations with its partner countries, with the 6 countries, 3 South Caucasian countries, and the other 3 also. I would like to continue with this issue. In one of his recent interviews, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says, "The EU is not a reliable partner, as it continues playing geopolitics the way, either with us or against us. Sanctions for Ukraine follows this logic. When the Eastern Partnership program was initiated, we tried to understand whether Russian interests were taken into consideration as our closest neighbors were invited there. There was no clear answer for us. They said we would take part in some projects. We were offered to join the program as an observer." It continues now, following the Eastern Partnership, the EU develops a program for Central Asia, also created with the exclusion of Russian interests. According to our information, now they are trying to link the Eastern Partnership with a new strategy for Central Asia. We know that there is a clear goal to take away Eastern and Central Asian partners from Russia, weaken our relations. End of quotation. Actually, many people think that Russia is mostly nervous about NATO enlargement or something, but Russia is nervous enough about Eastern Partnership too. Is Sergei Lavrov's perception accurate, do you think?
I think this is a typical Sergei Lavrov
Yeah,
reaction to
course.
initiatives, and it's typically provocative and overestimates also the role and the dynamic of the Eastern Partnership or the Central Asia strategy. There was, I think we should remember that there was, before Eastern Partnership initiative, we had a European neighborhood policy, and this was also offered to Russia to join. And Russia refused to join at this time. And then we had growing conflicts also. We remember 2008 Russian-Georgian War, and in 2009 it was then launched. So from EU side, EU is not really thinking in terms of geopolitics. It's not thinking in terms of competition with Russia about the region, but it always try to have a kind of an integrative approach with Russia, yeah, because it sees Russia as a key actor in this region. It's the same with Central Asia, yeah. So, and I just don't see that these policies are so strong as Mr. Lavrov has described them, and Russia has ignored Eastern Partnership for years.
Why he remembered this year, just recently?
Yeah, I think on one hand, the Russians have learned, maybe since 2013, when this crisis in Ukraine started, that association agreements and also visa agreements can change also the countries and change the post-Soviet legacy in these countries. So I think there is a kind of a threat if there's democratization, rule of law, open markets for Russian impact on these countries, because Russia has no interest in this. On the other hand, I think it's also used as a bargaining chip. Yeah, Lavrov is always bargaining, so he wants to pressure and to show the EU, look, you provoke us, make some compromises on Georgia and Ukraine, and even on Central Asia. You now provoke us, where we deal with China, and you will anyway have no chance. So I think it's also part of this bargaining and part of showing up. You want to provoke us, so you also have to make a compromise.
10 years are gone since the beginning of the Eastern Partnership, and what can we say today about its positive results and about the areas where we lack the success?
I think the main success is that it gave some of the countries like Georgia, Moldova, and also the Ukraine a kind of a reform path. So where to develop the country in terms of its economic reforms, in terms of its legal reforms and social reforms. So if you look to association agreements and free trade agreements, I think it's a kind of a guideline for the countries, which is very difficult to fulfill, but I think that's a success. At the same time, we still have vested interests in these countries. We still have corruption. We still have problems with media. We have some strong civil societies in Ukraine and in Georgia, but I think there's still not a kind of participation of civil society in politics which is needed for a democratic country. And we have the security challenge also in the whole region, which is not faced at all by Eastern Partnership. So I see some successes, especially in the reform process, but facing the everyday challenges in these countries and the legacy of a post-Soviet country with the vested interests, I think that there just see a deficit of Eastern Partnership.
You name civil society as an ally in your article, as an ally for the EU in supporting reforms in these countries. To talk more about Georgian civil society and its role in country's life, what do you mean in more political participation of the civil society?
I think the main idea behind this is the sandwich concept. So you have pressure from the EU on the reform process from outside, and you have pressure from inside, from civil society, from those organizations or citizens who want to have change in the country. And I think the EU should much more engage with this civil society in terms of monitoring processes, in terms of communication with the society, in terms of implementation of reforms. Yeah, because you often have very nice laws, but then if it comes to the implementation of these laws, there's a lack of it. And I think there needs a pressure from inside and a better communication also towards society. And I think civil society can play here a crucial role.
As I know, more than 100,000 projects were financed in the framework of the Eastern Partnership, I mean in the whole region. What more could be done? Is it about financing the initiative, or it's about something else?
I don't think that civil society likes to hear this, but I think there's a lot of funding for civil society in Georgia. But if you look, then what is the result? It's rather limited in terms of transformation. So I think it's not about the quantity, but the quality of civil society work, maybe even grassroots work, which is going on in the country. But then it's also the question how to link it better with EU policy in terms of monitoring, as I said, in terms of communication. So you have all these specific projects on many issues, and you have in parallel a lot of projects where you think why you need like 3 or 4 projects on the same issue. But to think more systematically also in the Eastern Partnership, how we get this the implementation better through, how we empower also stronger society, I think this is not conceptually not well thought through, in my opinion, and this is just a discussion which has started.
You write also that unfortunately ideas are lacking on how to break these countries' Soviet and post-Soviet legacies. New ideas are needed on how to reach the next stage of transformation without having an EU membership on the table as a carrot. Is it about lack of ideas or lack of them in certain circles, I mean decision-making circles, or is this about the lack of carrot on the table?
I think it's all together. So I think there's a lack of ambitions from the EU side to bring these countries
I missed that.
closer to the EU. And maybe there's also the countries itself get tired a little bit of EU policy. So there's also a EU fatigue in Eastern Partnership countries because there is not this carrot of membership perspective. But I think the EU will look like in 10 years completely different. So there are other opportunities to integrate in different fields in the EU, and to have, for instance, like the Polish government proposed these ideas of having a common digital space, a common energy space. So integrate in some areas where you in the end are very close to a membership without a membership perspective, but preparing for this membership perspective when it might be politically possible.
So it can be something else than the EU membership itself. I mean, the goal, something that you are heading to.
I would never lose this goal of EU membership. I think for me that would be the vision, also for EU as an EU citizen, but also for the countries itself. How this membership will look like in 10 years, we don't know, because we don't know how the EU will look like in 10 years. And then you might have different kinds of integration, but you can integrate in other fields to prepare this membership, and you can already benefit on this. For instance, on roaming, that you have a common space of roaming, telephone and internet, and citizens already feel this. And I think this is also important, that people feel it brings benefits to them. And I think that this brings two things. It brings on one hand a kind of an integration with the EU, but also a reform process and further progress in transformation for Georgia and other Eastern Partnership countries.
You started listing some stuff that people can feel. People can feel visa liberalization, some part of association agreement effect also. What else? Just to dictate, I mean, just to help us.
As I mentioned it also with roaming. But I think the main problem is that Georgia, for instance, has not benefited from the DCFTA. Because
not that much.
Not that much, because it does not fulfill the standards. There's still a problem with the quality of food. And I think that's a problem the government has to solve. So, and I think here you really needs a push in terms of coming closer to the standards. Then it will be beneficial also for small and medium-sized companies, for food producers, and it's not only honey and wine which is exported to the EU, but maybe other high-quality products which are in Georgia. So I think you can also look to other fields which are already there, and where you can also identify where the government failed until now to provide these kind of standards and to help also their own producers to come on the EU market.
That's a good example of when expectation and reality don't meet don't meet each
Exactly.
other.
Yeah, there is a frustration there.
Yeah.
People don't understand why it does not work. And this is again about communication, and then work and pushing also the government to have these standards, and then you need support for the companies to implement this.
And I would like to finish with what I started. Actually, it's a topic of one separate big interview, maybe sometime in the future. But what would be your advice to Georgians, Georgian society, not only government, but the whole country? What should be the main thoughts when dealing with the issue of occupation, dealing with Russia, when there is a push, as you mentioned, from the West already?
I think you have to deal with Russia. Yeah, it's no option not to talk and not to deal with Russia, also in this context. But I think a key problem here in Georgia is that there is this idea that Russia is the main problem, and if Russia is gone, then the problem is solved. So I think Georgians should think much more about Abkhaz and Ossetians than about the Russians first of all, yeah, because I think they have also an issue with each other. And sure, Russia is the occupier, but from an Abkhazian Ossetian side, it's maybe also a protector, yeah. So, and I think there needs an open discussion in the society about a vision also for these territories as part of Georgia, but also thinking about the people in these two regions of Georgia which are occupied, to bring them closer to Georgia, and not only to think about Russia as an occupier and looking for other countries in the world who can help here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.